The skies over the United Arab Emirates turned hostile on December 18, 2025, as unstable weather pushed across the country with a force that residents in Dubai never take lightly. Thunder cracking over glass towers, rain hammering asphalt, and gusts that made even routine commutes feel like a calculated risk. The National Center of Meteorology's warnings, carried widely in local reporting, pointed to an active system capable of bringing thunderstorms, lightning, and in some areas, hail, along with dust-raising winds and rough seas, a combination that turns ordinary streets into bottlenecks and low-lying pockets into sudden hazards. By the time the rain peaked across parts of Dubai and neighboring Emirates, the message from authorities and public advisories was consistent. Stay indoors if possible, avoid flood-prone areas, and limit movement until the worst passed. What followed was not a single dramatic moment, but a rolling sequence of disruptions, the kind that spreads through a modern city like a shockwave, jumping from roads to airports, from neighborhoods to national schedules. On Thursday and into Friday, heavy rain and thunderstorms affected large parts of the UAE. And while the country's emergency response machine moved quickly, the impact on travel began to show up in the places that matter most to a global hub. The runways, the arrival halls, the highways feeding them. Gulf News reported that Dubai police were placed on 24/7 alert as the rains began, while emergency services and local authorities activated response plans, deploying security and traffic patrols across key roads to keep movement possible and to handle incidents as they emerged. In the same stream of updates, the National Center of Meteorology was cited reporting widespread rainfall across the country, with Saqr Port recording the highest measured total at 98 millimeters over a 24-hour window, a figure that underscored how broad the system's reach had become. Inside Dubai, the city's transport and municipal systems shifted into contingency mode, quietly, urgently, and at scale. The National reported that Dubai's Roads and Transport Authority deployed more than 300 fixed and mobile pumps in flood-hit areas to drain water from roads and ease traffic congestion, an operational detail that speaks to both the intensity of the rainfall and the speed with which waterlogging can cripple urban circulation. Gulf News, tracking developments through the day, echoed the posture of full readiness, round-the-clock monitoring, field teams and rapid response units, and what it described as a joint flood management effort aimed at tackling rainwater accumulation while keeping essential corridors functioning. Even so, the rain found its weak points. Low spots, busy junctions, dense neighborhood streets, where pooling water can trap vehicles and slow emergency access down to a crawl. As roads filled and visibility dipped, the crisis shifted from inconvenience to disruption, and from disruption to outright schedule collapse for some travelers. The National reported that flights to and from Dubai and Sharjah were canceled and delayed on Friday, after the country was lashed by heavy rain, thunder, and lightning for a second day, with Dubai's main hub seeing early morning flights grounded or pushed back. Emirates, the carrier most closely associated with the city's identity as a crossroads of continents, acknowledged the scope of the disruption. Adverse weather across the UAE and surrounding region on December 18th and 19th impacted operations, leading to cancellations, delays, and retimed departures. The airline went further, announcing that 13 flights from Dubai International Airport would be suspended on Friday because of treacherous conditions. A decisive move in a region where maintaining connectivity is often treated as a point of pride. The shock wasn't confined to one carrier or one terminal rhythm. Fly Dubai said the unstable weather led to select flights being canceled, delayed, or diverted, and advised passengers to allow extra time to reach the airport and to check for updates. An advisory that implicitly recognizes a second layer of risk. Even if a flight is technically operating, getting to the gate may become the real battle. On the ground, the National described residents wrestling with waterlogged roads as they tried to make flights. And Gulf News' reporting captured the same central tension. A city designed for speed suddenly forced to slow, and then to stop, at the worst possible time for travelers. Public space, normally Dubai's open-air stage, was temporarily shut down as a safety measure while the storm pressed in. The National reported that beaches, public parks, and open-air markets had been closed on Thursday, then reopened later as conditions improved, a sign that municipal assessments were being updated in near real time as the weather shifted. Gulf News also reported that Dubai and Abu Dhabi reopened parks and beaches as the situation eased, while continuing to urge caution and adherence to safety measures, keeping the focus on preventing secondary accidents after the initial downpour. The city's response, in other words, was not just about enduring rainfall. It was about managing the after effects: slick roads, hidden potholes beneath pooled water, and the lingering instability of a system that, meteorologists warned, could remain unsettled into the weekend.
And this is where the story's tone changes, because by Friday, December 19th, the immediate drama of the downpour began to give way to a different kind of urgency: recovery at scale, while the atmosphere still threatened a return. The National described a mammoth cleanup operation across the Emirates after a 2-day rainstorm, indicating the drainage, road clearance, and mobility restoration had become the day's central mission. Gulf News noted that cloud cover was expected to fluctuate through Saturday, December 20th, keeping the sense of watchfulness alive even as some services returned toward normal. Dubai had not been beaten by the storm, but it had been forced, briefly, dramatically, to negotiate with it. By the morning of Friday, December 19th, Dubai's storm story was no longer only about what fell from the sky. It was about what stopped moving on the ground. The rain had already done what heavy, fast-moving weather does best in a dense city. It found every weak seam in the daily routine and pulled. Intercity movement, normally effortless across the Dubai, Sharjah, Ajman corridor, became a safety question, and Dubai's Roads and Transport Authority made a decision that signaled how seriously conditions were being treated. Intercity bus services to and from Ajman and Sharjah were temporarily suspended until further notice. The RTA clarified that the Dubai Metro continued operating normally, trains running as scheduled. But the suspension itself drew a thick line under the moment. This was not business as usual, and the city wanted people to move only when they had to. The weather system was not just a Dubai story. It was a countrywide disruption mapped in millimeters and warnings. Gulf News, citing the National Center of Meteorology's daily climate report, described rainfall recorded across the UAE between 8 a.m. on Wednesday, December 18th, and 8 a.m. on Thursday, December 19th, an official measurement window that turned the storm into hard numbers. Saqr Port registered 98 millimeters of rain, Al Ghazla 94 millimeters, while mountainous areas recorded major totals as well, including 92.3 millimeters at Jebel Jayas and 91.3 millimeters at Jebel al-Raba. Those figures mattered for more than headlines. They explain the flooded stretches, the saturated wadis, and the sheer volume of water that drainage systems had to fight, minute after minute. Then came the second punch. Even as some rainfall eased, the forecast refused to offer a clean exit. The National Center of Meteorology expected unsettled conditions to continue into Saturday, with skies ranging from partly cloudy to cloudy at times, and convective cloud formations likely to develop. Language meteorologists use when the atmosphere still has energy to spare. The same NCM bulletin warned of moderate to occasionally strong winds associated with cloud activity, raising dust and sand in exposed areas, shifting from southeasterly to northwesterly, and gusting up to 45 kilometers per hour. In practical terms, it meant that recovery work, pumping, clearing, and restoring traffic flow, had to happen under the lingering threat of another burst of rain, another sudden gust, another pulse of visibility-killing spray. At the center of the region's attention, as always, was aviation, Dubai's most sensitive indicator of disruption. While airlines were issuing their own updates, the broader picture was visible in the rolling lists of delays and cancellations that piled up across the hub's departure boards. A reminder that a global airport is only as smooth as the weather in the skies above it and the roads leading to its gates. Gulf News reported that Dubai International Airport was experiencing significant delays and cancellations due to unstable weather conditions on Friday morning, with forecasts warning of heavy rainfall,
thunderstorms, strong winds, and potential fog from December 18 through midday December 19. Exactly the mix that can force spacing between aircraft, slow ground handling, and stretch turnaround times. In this kind of disruption, minutes multiply. A late inbound aircraft delays its outbound rotation. Crews run into duty time limits. Baggage connections miss their windows. And the airport's tempo, normally relentless, begins to stagger. But the most decisive signal did not come from a rumor on social media or a shaky video clip. It came from the measured language of official guidance. Don't come unless you must. Dubai Airport's public statement on weather disruption, an unusually firm advisory for one of the world's busiest hubs, told passengers not to come to the airport unless their flight was confirmed to be operating, urging travelers to check with their airlines for the latest status. The same statement warned that significant delays and cancellations could continue, and that road conditions and standing water could affect access routes, turning the journey to the terminal into a potential obstacle course. When an airport operator issues that kind of message, it is not theater. It is triage, an attempt to keep terminals from being overwhelmed by stranded crowds while operations struggle to recover outside. Across Dubai and the Northern Emirates, the day became a contest between infrastructure and accumulation. Rainwater does not need hours to become dangerous. It needs only the wrong spot. An underpass, a low curb, a blocked drain, a hard turn where drivers brake late. With intercity buses suspended, authorities were signaling that even experienced commuters should not assume the usual routes would be safe or passable. The fact that the metro remained operational provided a critical lifeline, but it also sharpened the story's tension. The city could still move, yet it was being asked to move differently and carefully. By Friday night, December 19th, the rain's immediate violence was fading in some areas, but the system's psychological pressure remained, partly because Dubai carries a very fresh memory of what extreme rainfall can do. The National's reporting framed the moment as a major cleanup operation after 2 days of stormy conditions, an acknowledgement that the response had entered its most labor-intensive phase, pumping out roads, restoring access, clearing debris, and returning services to a predictable rhythm. Gulf News's NCM-based update kept the caution alive with its emphasis on convective clouds and gusty winds continuing into Saturday. The message between the lines was stark. The storm's main wave may have passed, but the atmosphere was still loaded, and Dubai's recovery would have to be fast enough to outrun whatever the weekend might bring. In Part 3, the lens tightens on Saturday, December 20th, the day the city tries to reclaim normality, tracking the recovery narrative, what remained disrupted, and how official warnings shaped the next 24 hours as Dubai and the wider UAE stayed on alert. Saturday, December 20th, arrived with an uneasy bargain. The storm had loosened its grip, but the atmosphere still wouldn't promise peace. Official forecasting language stayed cautious. Partly cloudy to cloudy at times, convective clouds still possible, rainfall still on the table, especially over northern and eastern areas, and for Dubai, that meant the city could not simply move on, as if the previous 48 hours were a bad dream. The National Center of Meteorology's outlook, repeated across multiple UAE outlets, kept pointing to active winds, blowing dust, and the kind of shifting conditions that can turn a damp road into a dangerous one in minutes. In the storm's wake, the story moved from spectacle to stamina. The unglamorous, relentless work required to restore a metropolis built around speed. On Friday, the National had already framed Dubai's response as a mammoth cleanup operation after 2 days of rain and thunder. And that same recovery effort carried directly into Saturday. Drainage pumps, road clearing, traffic management, and the quiet reordering of a city that had been forced to pause. Gulf News's reporting, anchored in the NCM's climate and forecast updates, kept reminding readers why the cleanup could not relax. The system had delivered extremely high rainfall totals in parts of the UAE over the core window, including 98 millimeters at Saqr Port, and 94 millimeters at Al Ghazla, with major totals in mountainous areas such as Jebel Jais. Those numbers mattered on December 20th because they explained the backlog, how long it takes to drain, how long it takes to dry, and how quickly lingering moisture and debris can set the stage for secondary accidents. But nothing reveals the health of Dubai's recovery quite like the airport. And by Saturday, the world's attention was fixed on whether DXB could pull itself back into rhythm.
Earlier, Dubai airports had issued a blunt advisory, telling passengers not to come to the airport unless their flight was confirmed to be operating, warning of significant delays and cancellations, and highlighting that road conditions and standing water could affect access routes. That message, rare in its directness, was the voice of an operator trying to protect both safety and flow, attempting to prevent terminals from filling with uncertain crowds while the airfield and road network remained under stress. It also captured the truth of a hub airport during storms. Even when planes can technically take off, the system behind them, baggage, ground handling, crew rotations, connecting passengers, can still be in chaos. By the time the weekend recovery took hold, another key signal emerged through Gulf News. Airport operations at Dubai International had largely returned to normal, with flights operating as scheduled and only a limited number of connecting services still being cleared as the last knock-on effects worked through the network. The same report noted that the earlier weather volatility had slowed runway movements and disrupted turnaround times and inbound arrivals, classic triggers of cascading delays, and that ground teams continued to address residual disruptions from missed connections and aircraft rotations. Even as normal returned, the caution remained. Travelers were urged to check flight status with airlines and to allow additional travel time because weather-affected road conditions and residual congestion could still complicate access. In a city built on certainty, precise schedules, engineered convenience, those advisories were a reminder that the storm's true cost often shows up after the rain stops. On the ground, transport policy continued to reflect the same logic: reduce exposure, preserve safety, keep essential movement alive. As reported by Khaleej Times during the worst of the conditions, Dubai's RTA suspended intercity bus services to and from Ajman and Sharjah until further notice, while confirming that the Dubai Metro continued operating normally with trains running on schedule. Even without a single dramatic image, that decision reveals the character of the storm period. Authorities were not only responding to flooded lanes, they were actively trying to reduce the number of vehicles forced onto compromised roads. When a city chooses to limit how people move while keeping its rail spine running, it is an admission that the threat is not hypothetical. It is present, measurable, and capable of turning routine travel into emergency calls.